nerdy, unqualified, and indistinguishable from rambling. Welcome back to the A&D Show.
I can't believe people actually listen to this show.
Man, they are not ready for this.
My opinion's always correct, but you're allowed to be wrong.
All right. I agree. Hello, and welcome back to the A&D Show for episode 3. Man, we're just cooking right through this season.
My word. We're nearing it. We're nearing a record for consecutive episodes.
We're also nearing the season finale. I'm just kidding.
That's not funny. It's too early for that.
Oh man, I was actually talking with my wife earlier, pre-recording. Obviously, she's not here with me right now, and I was just kind of recounting for any of our viewers / listeners. I made mention last week on the show that we didn't have the fullness of the A&D Show available on YouTube. That has been rectified. We are fully available. Every episode from the archive is available on YouTube now.
My wife asked about that today, oddly. Like, she's been listening to our stuff, which is grossly uncomfortable.
It's strange.
It's like
all the times we've talked about her, she's gonna be like,
yeah. And I feel like
you said that.
Like, it's weird. Like, we've been, the next month's our 11th year of marriage, and she's finally beginning to care about my life. It's kind of nice.
Took 11 years to get there.
We're making progress.
Oh, classic. But yeah, no. So all of the episodes, all archived episodes, all the way back to season 1, episode 1, our debut, available on YouTube now. And I was talking with Allison about it. My wife, if you don't know her name is Allison. Anyway, I was talking with her about it before we recorded, and I was just kind of recounting how many episodes that we did in each season. Season 1, this is just a little history of the A&D Show. Season 1, 15 episodes. Not bad.
No,
I know plenty of shows out there who didn't get quite that far.
Solid.
Season 2, 16 episodes.
Moving up.
We're really kicking it up a notch that year. And then season 3, 1 episode.
Good job, guys.
And then season 4, I think we maybe came down to 4. I think we got 4 in, maybe 5. I can't remember exactly. And then here we are, season 5, 3 episodes in, going strong. It's just big. It's a big deal for us. Our episodes look better than ever. They're longer than ever. We're more consistent than ever. We've been every week. This is unprecedented. It's huge.
Fascinating. Yeah, we're making progress.
Yeah. So thank you, listeners and viewers, for coming along with the ride. If you weren't out there, we'd probably still do this because we just like to talk about this stuff. But we appreciate that you're listening and commenting.
Yeah, so somebody asked me today. They go. Why do you do a podcast? I said, I just want to talk.
Yeah.
Like my opinions deserve to be out there instead of just in my head. Like, I want to share those with the world.
Right.
And maybe the world is 3 people, and that's fine. You're the world. Those 3 people are the world to me. That's all that matters.
My mom, and then the 2 of us.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't even think my mom's listened to any of our new episodes yet.
That's rude.
So
that's very
I will
rude.
say I do have a friend here in town that is a faithful listener. Calling you out, Zach. Thank you for being a faithful listener. My mother-in-law, it's funny because my mother-in-law, I was telling her about our podcast and the kind of content that we're putting out there and how much fun we're having with it, getting back to it. And she was like, why do you do it? What's your goal? What's your mission? I'm like, well, honestly, and it was basically the same thing that you said to your inquiry. I said, the thing is, the stuff that Austin and I talk about in the A&D Show are things that our wives really don't care about, and we need an outlet. So we enjoy just kind of talking about the things that they don't care about. They don't want to talk with us about. Allison doesn't listen to the show, but she probably hears it through the wall. So she probably doesn't need to listen to the show. I told her, I'm like, just put it on when you go to sleep, so at least we'll get some viewers.
It's white noise. Yes, it's another repeat so that view count, so the listen count goes up.
Right.
I want to move. I want to move up the Apple chart.
Yeah. Right. Get to that at least in the top 7 billion shows. So, man, before we get into the episode, though, I got one disclaimer. First of all, no sequels were made during the recording of this podcast, unless, of course, you factor in Disney, in which case all of the sequels were made during the recording of this episode, most of which suck.
Not all.
Most, not all. This is a key factor tonight. So tonight we're going to be talking about, you guessed it, the sequel wars. So A&D Show presents the sequel wars. And this is a topic very near and dear to both Austin and I. And boy, howdy, we have some ideas, we have some thoughts, we have some opinions, and we're going to share the heck out of them. So get ready,
It's
buckle up.
my caveat is that I am a bit of a sequel junkie. Like I love a sequel, even a bad sequel. I love. Um, I have listened to a ton of cover songs that are better
Mhm.
than original. And maybe that's not for everybody, but I love a good cover. Especially like a reimagining cover.
Right.
But we wanted to discuss our favorite sequels and our favorite reboots because
Calling you out, talking
not
about music, calling you out our last night for being one of the greatest cover
so good,
artists out. I mean,
so
that's
good.
not all they do. They do have originals, but they make the most mind-bending, epic pop punk renditions of regular songs. If you
You know,
haven't
when I
heard, check 'em out.
when I was younger, I would just like wait with bated breath for every year for them to drop the latest Punk Goes Pop
Yeah.
volumes.
Oh my gosh.
So
Yeah.
good, so good.
Throwback.
Oh my gosh.
They
I
haven't
I,
made
I want to say that whenever I think it We Came as Romans, they did a Taylor Swift song and it was just phenomenal. And it was just like, this is great because
when,
it's just screamo and it's like, this is
yes.
incredible. Like
When Memphis
if
Mayfire,
Taylor would do this, I would go to her concerts, but I'm not going
right.
to her concerts.
When Memphis Mayfire did Grenade by Bruno Mars, blew my
Right,
freaking mind.
right.
I'm like,
So
this it's so much more appropriate. This style of music is so much more appropriate for the content of this song.
it's only
But
good music. All right.
right. True.
I need some angst in my music.
It's true. It's true.
So when we talk about sequels,
Yes.
so we are referring to a direct sequel. So in that vein, like movies like Batman Forever, Batman and Robin are disqualified because they are not sequels; they're third and fourth movies.
Yes.
Now a reboot would technically be, the first two Batman movies, and then the Kilmer Clooney movies, and then that'd be a reboot, and then a
Mhm.
reboot into the Nolan trilogy, and then a reboot into the Matt Reeves Batman movies. Those are all reboots.
Yes.
They would not be sequels. So obviously, The Dark Knight is a phenomenal sequel, but it's not technically a sequel. It's technically a sequel to
To
Batman
the
Begins, so
Begin.
it would, I guess, be considered. But I would honestly more consider that more of a reboot, in my opinion.
Right.
But we can have the discussion. But it's got to be a true sequel to the movie, and then and then for a reboot, it's got to be a true reboot. Either a different leading actor, or a whole new story.
Yeah.
I've got a few, and to be fair, we know each other's lists.
Yes.
The first one I
We
want to talk
did
about,
discuss this before recording.
yeah,
Only lightly, but we did
lightly,
discuss.
lightly. I asked for his list because I didn't want a ton of overlap, and I want to make sure that we had some things to go back and forth on.
Yes.
But we both had Terminator 2: Judgment Day on our list.
Oh my gosh.
Quite so that was my number one. It without a doubt, that was my first sequel that came to mind was T2. Like another one of those movies as a kid, I probably shouldn't have watched, but I did.
Yeah.
And I watched it on repeat.
Mhm.
The fact that you had that scene with the T2000 turning into liquid metal and going through the bars,
Oh,
it for that time was a phenomenon. I mean, the fact that Spielberg was able to do that in what was it 91 when that came out, 1991,
I don't remember. I'll have to look it up real quick.
whatever year it was. I mean, it was well ahead of its time. It was fascinating to see that kind of special effects in that movie.
It was 1991.
91.
You nailed
And so, I was like 7 when I first saw that. So I was a little bit older, probably 92 when I first saw it. It was still too young. And it
Yeah.
scared the tar out of me, but it was awesome.
It's just
T2.
so good.
T2 is the quintessential sequel movie that you just can't beat. Like it's absolutely phenomenal. The acting is great. Sarah Connor, played by
Linda Hamilton.
Linda Hamilton, is probably for my money, the best female hero out
Yeah.
there. I think that you really can't beat Linda Hamilton's Sarah Connor. Um, it's just so good. It's just
I
so
will
good.
say her character development between 1 and 2 was a pretty stark contrast. I actually really appreciated the way that they developed her character between the 2 films, like, in between
Mhm.
them,
Yeah,
because she was this kind of, like, just normal, everyday girl, and then she's gets this whole thing thrown into her life.
right.
By the end of that movie, she's like, "I don't know what I'm gonna do with my life. I have to figure this out." And then fast forward between the 2 films, and then all of a
Mhm.
sudden she's like this, like, powerhouse of, an independent woman, and I thought that was pretty cool. Pretty cool development.
It's so good, so good.
Yeah.
Um, I'm gonna let you roll a couple of years off, and there's one that you have on your list that I hate you for, and you know what it is, but
I
I'll let
don't
you bring it up.
I don't know if I do, but I'm
I'll
gonna
let you
bring
bring
it
it
up.
up.
It's gonna get controversial on this episode. I'm just gonna throw it out there right off the gate. But I will say I do want to jump in there because Terminator 2 was also on my list. I will say I also saw this movie probably far younger than I should have, but the
To be fair, you're younger than I am,
yeah,
so
it
I know
was
that when
my
I saw
shoot.
it, I was too young. So I know that you probably saw it around when I did. So
Yeah,
you were absolutely too young.
yeah, yeah. But what I will say is that the development of the characters, I mean, Robert Patrick in his quintessential like breakout role, I would think, just an incredible cast, an
But he's
incredible character, incredible story.
but he's had he's even had like late career kind of rebirths too.
Yeah,
He's in Reacher now,
yeah,
and I mean, or he was. Spoiler alert. Um, but he plays such a good villain, but
yeah,
it's like a low key villain. It's like it's not your typical like brooding villain, but it's just
yeah,
like, hey, I'm a bad dude. He's so good at it.
yeah.
He's such a good actor.
Did you catch? Have you seen the full season too?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. Did you catch his callback to Terminator 2?
yeah,
Uh, Something about Sarah Connor, he's like, "F her," or something like
yeah.
that. It was really funny. The funny thing about it was, from what I gather, that was a totally unscripted part of the show. It wasn't actually written in, it was just a total, like, mishap, and, pretty cool. But yeah, so Terminator 2 definitely makes my list. Um, you're right though, because like the contrast between the first one, the CGI or the special effects in the first one, it was a very iconic movie, but it was pretty jank. I mean,
And
the
honestly,
shoot,
I'm not even sure that I've seen all of T1.
yeah,
Like
it's
to be
pretty
quite
good.
honest, is it good?
It's
I
very
I
iconic,
I
very
re-
very.
I mean I watched it when I was younger, but I don't remember. Can't remember if I watched the entire thing. And honestly, it's probably one that I need to go back and rewatch.
Yeah,
But like when I was younger, I remember watching parts of it. But I don't know that. But like I just remember like knowing like one was so good and two
mhm,
as a young person I couldn't necessarily get into.
yeah.
Um, that I don't know. I couldn't get into it as a young person. And it's again I need to go back and rewatch the first
Yeah.
one.
Well, I
But
will
I
say
think regardless of how I feel about the first one, the second one's just so good. It doesn't matter how the first one goes.
that's true. That's true. And I will say, giving credit where credit's due, I think Arnold's character in the first one was significantly more menacing. The second one, they'd kind of softened him up to this kind of father figure that just happens to be a robot underneath this fleshy blob. Which, by the way, the scene where I'm just I'm not even gonna bother with a spoiler alert on this because if you haven't
It's
seen
from
it by
91.
now,
All
you're
right.
probably never gonna watch it.
You've had what 20 no 33 years to do it. All
Yeah,
right, to figure
yeah.
it out.
Yeah. If you haven't watched it by now, get over yourself and go see it. But the scene where to prove that he is a robot and not a human, where he cuts on his arm and peels the flesh off of his endoskeleton and shows his arm, that was like mind blowing. Like you're talking about the CG character shape shifting through the walls and turning into a puddle on the floor and then reanimating and all this. That was groundbreaking technology development.
Mhm.
But the shot that got me
Yeah.
was the scene, the two scenes. The one where he cuts the flesh, peels it off of his arm, and then the same arm later that gets caught in the gear and gets crushed off, and he has these little tendrils like coming out of his arm. That was like mind blowing
Yeah.
to me. And funny backstory too. That and this will prove that I saw this movie way too young. My mom took my brother and I to a daycare, and we had seen that movie, and I found an action figure. It was probably, I don't know, 6 or 8 inches tall, but it was an action figure of Arnold as the Terminator, and one arm was chopped off at the elbow with little tendrils hanging out. And I thought that was the coolest toy, and I totally would have stole it if I had been
Should have.
any
Should
less
have.
of a man at that point in my life. But yeah, no, Terminator 2, high on the list. I'm gonna jump in here with something I think is gonna be really controversial though, with my second choice. The Empire Strikes Back is better than A New Hope. Um, if you don't know what I'm talking about, Star Wars. If you didn't know that that was Star Wars, stop listening to this podcast
Yeah,
and just
you're on the wrong show. You're on the wrong show.
continue listening.
Okay.
But here's the thing: there's so much that was birthed in that franchise in the second movie. It's my wife's favorite of the entire franchise. We have a full-sized, movie theater kiosk poster. I think it's like 24 by 36. It's massive, hanging on the wall in our nerd cave, our entertainment room in our house. And it's the best. It's the movie that really set the franchise. Now, I will say one caveat to that is that it really established a lot of plot holes that have still never been fixed. The first one, he wasn't related to Leia, and they totally made out in that movie. By the second one, the brother and sister, and they never address it again.
No.
Things like that just they just kind of forget about, and they don't really worry about them. And there's a point of which you're just like, you gotta respect them for just moving on with the story and not fretting the small details, even though they're not small details. But yeah, that's my second. And the visual effects were better. They had a higher budget. They really kind of moved the story along. It just was much better character development. And generally, the world started to shape itself with that movie. And I think it really outpaced and outscaled. Plus, you get the freaking awesome scene on Hoth where Luke gets taken by the Yeti guy and has to cut the dude's arm off and survive out in the winter. That was Empire Strikes Back, right? I'm not misremembering this, right? I'm pretty sure I'm right.
Yeah. You're right.
Great film. Definitely better than the first.
Yeah. My second better sequel is Lethal Weapon 2. Okay.
Ooh.
I have always had a soft spot in my heart for buddy cop films. Again, something that I got from my father. We watched a lot of these movies growing up. Beverly Hills Cop, which that could be on the list, but I think one's still probably better than two. But Lethal Weapon 2, and honestly, the story is they're both good on 1 and 2, but the chemistry that they built on with Mel Gibson, Danny Glover's characters in 2 was so much better.
Yeah.
They really kind of like honed in on the humor between the two, and it just worked so well. And that was one thing that they really needed to do was that and I think with your first one, I think you don't really know what you have until you have it.
Yeah.
And then they really they took what was great in the first one and made it better in the second one. Mel Gibson in that movie and Danny Glover were just phenomenal.
Yeah.
I
would say
I keep hoping for like a new one. That'd be awesome. Like,
did you ever watch the reboot? I know this is
no, I'd heard it was good, and then I heard like they fired some guy because of something. I don't know.
So here's the story, because I think, and this is a classic case of when reboots fail, and it's not that the reboot was a problem. It didn't capture the charm of the original. I mean, when you're losing talent like Joe Pesci. I mean, Joe Pesci, like, his character was a standout character in that entire franchise.
So
plus Mel and Danny, like they're so charismatic and they're so likable and engaging. But what happened was, I think it was Damon Wayans plays Danny Glover's character.
Yeah, and then who was the guy that played?
I don't remember.
But didn't he get fired for like punches, like like punching somebody on the set or whatever.
Yeah, it was his name
And
was Clayne Crawford.
yeah, and he got fired for that. And then I guess they recast it. And
Yeah.
I am not I don't care what happens. You can't recast a guy.
Well, that's the thing. They didn't recast him. They killed him.
Oh, that's stupid. That's even
I
worse.
I watched so here's what happens. I started watching the show when it first started airing. Damon Wayans, Clayne Crawford, just because this new kind of serial show that was based on that same IP, and it wasn't horrible, but it just didn't have the same. First of all, the problem that you run into is this is a show made for broadcast television,
Mhm.
and it doesn't have the
You
same
can't.
grittiness as you
Yeah.
would get with an R rating, which
I
I'm
mean,
not
at
against.
very least, that's got to be on, be on like an FX. At very least, it can't be on
Right.
like a Fox. It's got to be on something that you can get away with a little bit more than you can on broadcast TV.
Right, because you miss and here's the thing, I'm not against a PG-13 or a
No,
PG.
no,
I
I'm all for
enjoy
it. I
a
think it's great.
family-friendly outing. The thing
Yes.
that you miss with a buddy cop show, though, when you don't have that higher age rating, is you miss a little bit more of that gritty realism that
Mhm.
makes it such a gripping show,
Right.
and this did miss a good bit of that, and so the show goes on, and it was entertaining, but it was forgettable.
Right.
Well, then all kinds of like mishaps start happening with Clayne and all this. I don't even know what happened. I don't really care to find out. But he gets booted from the show, but not before they write his character out, and they ultimately killed him, shot him dead, and so they killed the legacy character of Martin Riggs on screen at the end of this first or second season, and then they bring in now. And here's the thing. Here's the caveat to that they brought in Sean William Scott to take that meant to fill that role, and he did an excellent job.
Mhm.
I really like Sean William Scott post American Pie, but I like Sean William Scott, and I thought he did a great job. He's got that grittiness, and they brought him in as a new role. Wesley Cole is his character's name, and I thought he did a great job. I haven't picked up. I've only watched maybe the first 2 episodes of the third season, and it goes I think it goes for 3 or 4 no, 3 seasons, yeah. So there was only 1 season, then the show got canceled after he got put in there, but I thought his character, his version of that role, the kind of tormented, detective that's thrust into all these negative situations and has to deal with it, I thought his version of it was significantly superior to the other guy, Clayne Crawford. So, anyway, but yeah, no, I definitely see Lethal Weapon 2 was a huge step up from the first one, I agree.
Mhm.
Um, my second one, and that's gonna be kind of, I wanna say this is gonna be kinda tongue in cheek, but it's not. I genuinely love this movie so much. Paddington 2. If you
I mean,
haven't
I don't listen. So, if you don't listen to our show, Paddington 2 has been a running thing for him and his affection for this movie.
it's so
And
good.
I have a major problem with it. Like a big problem with it. I'm all for family friendly movies. But no, David, it's awful.
No, here's the thing. Paddington, for the uninitiated, and I guess even for your edification, Austin, Paddington, the franchise the film franchise. I haven't watched any of the cartoons or anything like that. I don't really care that much. But the film franchise is essentially what you would get if Winnie the Pooh Bear from the Christopher Robin books and the Amy Line novels, if he were a real bear in real life that could talk and was British. It's like the most adorable, family friendly story. It is so, so good. The first one, absolutely phenomenal. But I will say the second one is just so much better. It's got an absolutely freaking stacked cast. It is hilarious. I'm like rolling on the floor the whole time. I showed it to my wife. She loves it. I've showed it to my nieces and my nephew. They love it. Everybody I've shown this movie to has loved it. The only exception to that is that Joker right there. This guy.
Listen, at this point, this is my character now, and I can't break out a character. I can never watch Paddington. Although
It's
I'm sure the girls at some point will need to watch it, but I refuse to. I will take your word at how good this movie is, and I will just believe you. That's fine.
I'll just message your wife and let her know where she can go to watch it and show the girls, and then you'll have to watch it.
That's true. That's true.
No, but it's just it capitalizes on everything good from the first one, and it just adds so much more to the story, and ultimately, the funniest capers of the whole film, this adorable, very innocent little bear ends up going to prison because he's accused of thievery or something, and vandalism. He ends up going to prison, and then he has this such a dramatically positive impact on all the prisoners, and it's really, really fantastic. Really, really good.
Cool. Cool.
It's fine, yeah.
My third better than the original, but my third better sequel is The Winter Soldier, Captain America, The Winter Soldier. When I first saw when I saw the first Captain America, that was before like the Marvel thing got huge.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm just kind of like, I'll watch it, no big deal. And I don't know that I've ever had that much fun at a movie, like in the majority of my life watching a movie. And so I got kind of hooked at that point. And then, you hear about Winter Soldier, and I'm like, it really probably can't get much better than what Captain America was.
Right.
And from start to finish, the Winter Soldier does not stop. It is so, so good from beginning to end, like the entire movie. And the reveal that it's Bucky, and I mean, some of the fight scenes are just, I mean, they're insane.
Yeah.
That was Marvel at its peak. Was like that first run of movies,
Yeah.
and it was just so, I mean, so good. I mean, it's really hard to beat how good that movie was. Um, I mean, I can't say enough about that movie. Chris Evans, Chris Evans and Sebastian Stan have such a good chemistry on camera,
Mhm.
and it's just, I mean, the story is just great. It's just so good.
I agree. I think that that's one of the films as far as the fight choreography and the violence, and I think that, like, because 'cause I'm not against violence. I don't like violence for violence sake, but I do like it whenever it packs a punch and
Mhm.
pun intended, and it has weight in the story,
Right, right.
and I think that this film is one of the heaviest hitting for specifically for Captain America. I mean, you look at him in, like, Endgame or, Infinity War or whatever the first one was. You look at him in those films, particularly Endgame, beginning Endgame, he's just completely downtrodden, totally beat to death pretty much, and he's just like because he lost, right?
Mhm.
But there's almost no there is no instance in the entire franchise, in the entire, um, story of Captain America, Chris Evans' Captain America. There's no point anywhere in there that he gets hit harder than when he has to basically fight to the death with his own against his own
Mhm.
best friend. And that
Right,
scene at the end when it's him and Tony and Bucky, and he's having to choose between
right.
this guy that he's like become close with, that they're fighting for the good of humanity together, and his best friend, like that had some that packed a punch, man.
It
That
did.
was hard. That
It
was
was so
really
good. So good. I miss those. I miss
yeah.
those.
I mean, it's like we talked about. If you haven't listened or watched episode 1 of season 5, go back and check it out
Yeah.
because we've talked about this at length, but this is a season of which in which Marvel they really hit good every
Yep.
single film. And they just have not been doing that good
No,
lately.
no.
So, my next choice is, The Chronicles of Riddick, and there's a good reason why, and that's not to say that the other films in the franchise are not good because they definitely are. Pitch Black with Vin Diesel was the opening of the Riddick story, and that movie was an absolute banger. Out of left field, this incredible, like, swashbuckling space pirates on a planet that is eternal night, so to speak, and these creatures come out to attack them, It's unbelievable, and it's so, so good, and there's so much mythos that they built with that first film, and it's really an excellent movie. I've watched it a dozen times. I really, really enjoy it, and this is Vin Diesel before I'm pretty sure this is Vin Diesel before, Fast and Furious fame, so this is, like, early Vin whenever he's really kinda getting his start and getting his boots off the ground,
Mhm.
and then you fast forward a couple years after that movie, 4 or 5 years or something, and Chronicles of Riddick come out. They reprise his role. Vin Diesel comes back to play the same role again, and what they did in the first film, this is one of the things that I love about a sequel is when it doesn't just do the same thing with a slight twist, you know? It really builds on a story. Like a good example of a bad sequel, and again, I like these movies, so they're not that's not that they're bad, but a good example of a bad movie are a bad sequel are the Pirates of the Caribbean sequels. They almost
Mhm.
never change the format of the film. It stays the same. There's always pirates and there's always death, and every once in a while there's a big creature, and it's like it doesn't really change that much. They're fun and they're watchable, but when it comes to a good sequel, a sequel that really either capitalizes or builds on the first one or far outweighs the first one in its quality, you got to do something different. You got to push those limits a little bit. And Chronicles of Riddick, man, it just nailed it. It took all the mythos that they started to build in the first movie in Pitch Black, and it just blew it up, and it just
Mhm.
created this whole world with this whole universe of characters, and it just went from this very isolated single one-off story to this big gorgeous universe of characters and races and wars and battles, and it was just, man, my favorite scene from that whole movie, my favorite sequence is when they get to, I can't remember, Crematoria is the name of the prison. It's on a planet that is too close to its star, and it's frozen on the night side, and it's literally like lava on the day side, and it's too hot or too cold on each of the sides respectively, and there's only a narrow band that basically moves as the planet rotates, that is habitable for people to be able to be on the surface. And so they have to like time their landings for dropping off prisoners or getting off the planet and so on and so forth. And it's all of the prison and everything is subterranean. It's such a cool concept. It's so high level sci-fi and adventure. It takes something that was already good and just makes it absolutely epic. I loved that movie. I've seen it
As,
so many times.
as a sci-fi junkie, I've never seen either of those movies.
Oh, you are
But I've
missing out.
also I've also never seen Pirates of the Caribbean, and I'm not missing out there. I feel
You're
okay
not
with that.
It's not that much. Like I said, they're very formulaic. They don't really push the envelope too much.
I've heard,
Especially
like I
by
said,
the
I've
end.
heard the Riddick movies are good. I've just never watched them.
Oh man, good is not a good enough descriptor for how good they really are.
My 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 next sequel, and probably my favorite, other than T2, is Ghostbusters 2. Now I
Yes.
know that may be sacrilegious to some people. The first one is great. You got you're fighting the dogs, and you're fighting the Keymaster, and the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, and it's good. It's really really good. It introduces these characters, and it's phenomenal. But my wife said goodnight. She just walked by and said goodnight. Uh, but number two is just so good. The scene where Rick Moranis comes after, brings the suits, and because the town's going crazy, and the art museum's covered in a pumpkin because of the ooze, and the mayor's like, somebody get me the Ghostbusters, and you see him like getting out of the insane asylum. It is probably one of my top 5 scenes in a movie of all time. You've got that music playing in the background, like even now, like I can watch that. Well, I can watch that scene today and still get goosebumps. Like how awesome I think that scene is. It's just so good. But the entire movie is great. The build up with Vigo the Carpathian
I was
is
gonna say,
just
is that the one with Vigo? Because
Vigo, and it's
that was the
phenomenal.
most
It's
menacing
phenomenal.
villain Oh my
Right.
god.
And so in the third movie that was canceled, and there's gonna be a third one, and they were gonna bring back Vigo, and it was gonna be so good. They ended up it ended up getting scrapped and whatever, but it was gonna be a phenomenal movie, I think. But two was just phenomenal. Now I loved one. That opening, the opening scene where they're in the library, the first one. I mean, it's just so iconic. But for me, and maybe I just have different taste, but I love the second movie.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it. You know,
I mean,
the scene where the caretaker of the museum comes and he's just like a nanny as a ghost, and he
yes.
puts the baby in the carriage and takes off across the sky. And
Yes.
Sigourney Weaver's like, my baby, my baby. It's so good. It's
Yeah.
such a great movie.
Peter McNichol as
Oh
Dr. Yanaz Poa
yes.
was like just unnervingly irritating, but he was so perfect for that role.
And a little bit creepy.
Yes. Oh,
It's the
so
season of Vigo.
it
And then he
was
gets
great.
oozed. It's great.
Rick
Such a
Moranis,
great I love Rick
Ernie.
Moranis.
This was Ernie's first movie, right?
No, was or no, Ernie wasn't too, wasn't in the first one, wasn't he?
Was he?
He was in the first one. I could have sworn he was because he's looking for a job. I could have
You're right.
sworn I could
You're
have
right.
sworn yeah.
He was
I
in
was
there.
certain because he walks into the shop whenever is it Dan Aykroyd's working on the Ecto
Yeah.
car. He's out of the car. And he's like, I'm looking for a job. And it's like, you're hired. Let's go. So,
It was
but
great.
it's such a good movie. It's such a good movie. Number two, again, you can't go wrong with either one. But for my money, just because of certain scenes and and maybe it was a recency bias for me for when I saw it because I saw the second one before the first one
Yeah.
as a kid. It was just so good. It was a huge part of my childhood, and I mean, the Ghostbusters in general were probably for a lot of people my age were a huge part of their childhood. Now the reboot is not the reboot's not bad.
No,
I
actually,
enjoyed the last one. Frozen Empire looks great. I
wait,
don't
hold on. Hold on.
I don't count the
Do you
Melissa
mean
McCarthy
reboot
one.
or do you mean the third sequel? The
Um,
prequel? Because the
number four,
threequel.
number four, three doesn't count.
No,
Three,
I'm not talking. There's no there. Number four is Frozen Empire. The one that's the reboot with the ladies, the hot
yeah,
garbage one.
that's
That
true.
one.
I guess you're right.
That's
You're
not
right. I
part.
guess you're right because there are original characters in it, so it's not a reboot. It's third and fourth. The reboot was trash.
Yeah,
But yeah, so
half the
for me,
original
I think
actors
that
cameo, and they're not the same characters.
yeah,
It's like a fever dream of like
it's
some.
it's a spit in the face.
Yeah,
But no,
it's
Ghostbusters 2 is it's just so good. It's so
solid.
good.
Solid. I actually really enjoyed the Afterlife, Ghostbusters Afterlife, the one with Paul Rudd. The
Yeah, I
third,
loved it. That was great.
so good.
That was
I
great.
really loved the homage that they paid to Harold Ramis.
Yeah.
It
But
was
I
really
I
nice.
have a very soft spot for Paul. I love Paul Rudd.
Yeah, me
I
too.
think I mean Paul Rudd's one of those guys that there's not a lot of movies he's going to be in that are bad.
Yeah,
He's a great. He's very his comedic timing is just stellar.
and when he's in a movie that's not great, he's the shining light in the movie.
Exactly.
Okay, case in point, Quantumania was a hot mess, but he was fantastic in it.
Yeah,
So,
I agree. I agree.
so my
What's your last sequel movie?
well, I've got
Oh,
one more.
you have two
Well,
more.
I've got two more,
We'll tell you
but
what. Do your non-reboot version sequel first,
yeah, okay,
because then we'll caveat in. We'll caveat into the reboots after this.
yes. So, my next one is again probably going to be a bit controversial because it is part of a beloved franchise, and it's not the first installation of that beloved franchise. My next sequel that is better than the original is Back to the Future Part 2. Now, I know what you're gonna say. Back to the Future is such a classic movie. You can't do better than Back to the
You
Future
can,
Part 1.
you
You
can.
can
Two's
with
better.
Part 2. And the reason I say that is because there's just so much more that you get
Mhm.
in Part 2. Now, I will say, now they didn't do this back then, but like it is akin to the idea of comparing like Lord of the Rings, the Two Towers to Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring, because they very seamlessly transition between the two. But the best part about there's so much to love about part two. The fact that they go to the future, they had so many predictions in the second one that so many of them came true. So many of them have been things that really push the envelope technologically speaking, things that we still can't do. Flying cars, hoverboards, self-tying shoes are a thing, but they're ungodly expensive.
Yeah,
So many things, and
and
it's just
and honestly, let's be real, they look ridiculous.
they
Okay,
do look ridiculous. They do. But the thing that I think is the best is that they swapped out the actress who plays his girlfriend and nobody noticed. Like, I can't even tell you how many times I have watched part 1 and part 2
it's
back to
true.
back and never even thought about they changed actresses.
It's true.
And, Christopher Lloyd, he really comes into his own in that as Doc, in that, like, he just really kind of, I don't know, his manic, crazy, mad scientist side really just comes out in a really
Mhm.
cool way. Plus,
Right.
all the future tech and all that kind of stuff, it's just so fun. So um that's my second to last. Do you have another one, or should I just do my last one?
Do your last one, and
Okay.
we're gonna roll into our reboots.
Okay. So my last sequel, better than the original, is kind of a two-parter, and it kind of ties, it's a good segue to the next portion of the show because it's kind of twofold in that it's a sequel and that there was a reboot of this sequel as a sequel to the reboot of the first one that is
Yeah.
also better than its original and even better than this original.
It's a lot of words.
So the movie I'm talking about, any of my sci-fi nerds out there are probably going to roll over in their graves or want to punch me through the computer right now, because the
Let them.
best
Let them
the
because you're right. We're
because I'm
both right
right,
on this one.
right. Star Trek 2: The Wrath of Khan just kicks the crap out of Star Trek the Motion Picture.
Mhm.
I'm sorry if you're a purist, but the reality is Star Trek 2: The Wrath of Khan is just a far superior film.
It's
And I'm
true.
going to tell you why. Star Trek 2 capitalized on Ricardo Montalban's like absolutely menacing Khan. He was phenomenal.
100%.
A little bit
100%.
weird that he wore this super deep V, had his chest exposed the whole time. I
I
could
always
never
wear
really
I
tell
wear
if
a
he was,
deep V.
I could never tell as a kid if he was trying to be like a super immodest woman or just like a very flamboyant, like muscular dude. I could never tell because he had the
True.
long hair and everything. I was, it was tripping me, but it was the 80s. So what are you going to
Yeah.
do? But just absolutely menacing.
Right.
And the way that he portrays this villain, the villain in the first one in motion picture was such garbage. It was basically a computer that had come to life, and it was just boring. It was beautiful. It was a beautiful movie, but it was just boring. And then the
Boring.
second one comes out, and Khan just kicks freaking butt. And I'm not going to stop there because, again, all my sci-fi and Star Trek buddies out there, you're probably going to hate this because, the original series crew, this is who we're talking about in Star Trek 2. They were phenomenal. But I have to say, and I have to be very transparent with myself and my dad, if you're listening to this, you're probably going to hate me for it too. But the reality is that the rebooted version of this story that happened in Star Trek Into Darkness, where Benedict Cumberbatch plays Khan Noonien Singh,
So good.
absolutely destroys the original beyond measure. Now, they take some creative liberties. They switch the character deaths in a way, and they take away a little bit of the heft of the story, but
Mhm.
the actual villain portrayal between the two, Ricardo Montalban and Benedict Cumberbatch, are absolutely neck and neck.
Yeah.
And even potentially Benedict can supersede Ricardo because, my goodness, the most menacing and brutal enemy I think that they could have ever had on screen, and it's
100%.
never been surpassed since.
No, not at all.
Not
Not even close. Not even close.
so
The
that's
the
my
the
last one.
the so we're in agreement 100% that the Star Trek reboot is better than the originals. Um, I went back, I fell in love with Chris Pine's, uh, you know,
Kirk.
Captain James T. Kirk
Yep.
and Zachary Quinto's Spock.
Yeah.
I thought they were phenomenal. Um, in fact, the entire cast on that, it's perfectly cast.
Mhm.
Um, and so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna rewatch the old Star Trek movies because they were on Prime and they sucked. They were awful. Like every single I didn't even like kind of enjoy it. And
Yeah.
I remember people saying like, "Listen, the show's better than the movies anyway." So I tried watching that. That was also awful. Didn't enjoy it. Did not enjoy it at all.
Let
And
me just
so,
let me just let me just pause you real quick.
okay, please.
I wanna be clear. I love the Abrams universe Star Trek. It in its entirety, all 3 films, and hopefully, eventually, the 4th that's
Oh, God
in
willing.
development hell. God knows when it's gonna come out, if it's ever gonna come out. But all of that, the Abrams universe that they have built, visually stunning, absolutely
Mhm.
gorgeous, perfectly cast. I mean, you got Carl Urban as Dr. McCoy, absolutely amazing. Simon
Perfect
Pegg,
casting.
Zoe Saldana as Uhura. Like you couldn't do better than that, right?
No.
But I will say, as much as I love those films, I still have a very soft spot for the originals. I grew up watching Next Generation on TV while it was airing. Such an incredible show. Patrick Stewart, the whole cast, Brent Spinner, all of it. Like I loved it so much. It was a totally different world, a totally different package of Star Trek. You got it's a lot more calm, a lot more logic, a lot less action, a lot less visually stunning. Especially whenever you get back into the original series, it's very, very campy
Mhm.
60s sci-fi television. The movies were a huge improvement upon the television show overall, visually and storytelling wise, pacing wise. But you're right. The two franchise iterations, they don't exactly cross over. And
Right.
that was one of the things I think that they did a bit of a disservice to the entire uh, IP is when they created something that was so striking and so incredibly engrossing and energetic, and then everybody's like, "Oh, you should go check out the original stuff from years and years ago," and it's not even close to the
No.
same value,
No.
not even close.
No.
But I still do love them very much. So
Right.
please don't don't hate in the comments because I do love the originals so much. I just watched one of the Patrick Stewart films the other day. I still love those movies.
And I'm gonna kind of rapid fire my reboots here
Yeah,
because we're getting close to an hour. I don't want our people to get
I get tired of hearing us
burn
talk.
out on us.
Yeah.
Reacher,
Oh my gosh. Don't get
like
started.
all right, so it's no mystery um that I have a Tom Cruise. I'm a Tom Cruise fanboy.
Oh, same.
Everything he does, and don't worry, we'll talk about him in a second. But everything Tom Cruise does is phenomenal. Every movie that he's made in the past 20 years has been an absolute hit. I greatly enjoyed the Jack Reacher movies. I thought they were really really good.
I did too. I
But
have them
then
in my
but
library.
then Alan Richmond or Alan Richmond comes along
Oh gosh.
and does this Reacher
Just kills
TV
it.
show. And I honestly, I'll be honest, I hadn't heard about it until it was already out.
Same.
And someone goes, "You need to watch the show." And I said, "What? Is it like the movie?" Because I'm like, it's not Tom Cruise. They goes, "Just you need to watch the show." And so I watched the first episode, like I think like 8:30 at night. Because for people that don't know me, my routine is that at our house when our kids go to bed, it's like prison, and we're all going to bed. It's lights out, and
Right.
so I usually lay in bed and I watch a show on my phone. And so it's 8:30, 8 o'clock at night, and I start episode 1 of Reacher. The next thing I know, it's 1:30 in the morning. I'm on like episode 6 and I can't stop. I have to stop because I have to go to work the next morning, but I can't stop. It was so good. Like it grabbed me.
Yeah.
And season
Phenomenal.
2, season 2 was even better. And I love but I also hate this new kind of weekly format that we're seeing on a lot of like streamed shows online.
Mhm.
On the primes, it's going to be in Disney Plus, it's one episode per week, which that's great because that helps with the long term subscriptions. But I also hate it.
Mhm.
They did that with Jack Ryan, which is another reboot that's really good, but it didn't make my list. But I think that all the there have been like 17 reboots of Tom Clancy stuff. So which one are you going to pick? But
Right.
for me, I think that Reacher is just it's so phenomenally done,
Yeah.
start to finish. Ocean's 11 with
So
Clooney and Brad Pitt and Don Cheadle. I
so
mean,
much.
it's an absolute like who's who. Matt Damon's in it. I mean, it's Julia Roberts, Andy Garcia. It's
Mhm.
great. Um,
Now, in fairness, I think if I'm not mistaken, the original was the who's who of its
it
time.
was it
It
was
was the Rat Pack that was in the show
it was,
movie, but
and it was great. It was so good. I greatly enjoyed Ocean's 11. Batman.
oh, come on.
We talked about it earlier. Both reboots are phenomenal. Now, I love the Keaton Batman. All right, I love Batman Returns. Batman, they were both really good. Batman Returns very well could have been on my sequel list, but
Yeah.
I've always been a bigger fan of the Joker than I have the Penguin and Catwoman.
Mhm.
Um, but um, the Christopher Nolan trilogy is phenomenal. It gave us possibly the greatest Batman movie all time with The Dark Knight. It's
Yeah.
phenomenal. And then Matt Reeves comes along and just rocks my world.
Oh my gosh.
Like, people lost their mind when it was like announced Pattinson was going to be Batman, and this first movie should have done nothing other than say, "Hey, listen, like this dude's not," because people look at Pattinson, they see Twilight, but they don't see everything else he's done.
Yeah.
He is a phenomenal. Like he's a little bit of an oddball, but he is a phenomenal actor.
Yeah.
And so to sit there and be like, "Well, I don't want Pattinson to be Batman because he was in Twilight," I don't care. I don't care. Drake was on Degrassi, and people still listen to his music. Okay, I don't want to hear it. Knock it
Right.
off. And so it's like I sit there and it's like both reboots are just phenomenal, and I'm so ready for the next one to come out, which I think is next year. I think I got like
Yeah, I think
more than
so.
a year to wait.
Yeah.
But I'm just so excited for it. But if nothing else, the Dark Knight trilogy kind of, and really, I think that the Dark Knight itself really kind of changed how we did superhero movies because it
Mhm.
showed that that was the first like dark and broody like Batman Begins wasn't like real colorful, but like the Dark Knight was so dark and so broody and so you know I liked the Batman Begins stuff or the Nolan trilogy and now the Reeves movies because they went away from the Joel Schumacher, the Mr. Freeze, the Schwarzenegger,
Mhm.
the secret, magical powers or whatever, the frozen ray guns or whatever. And they just showed, listen, like you don't need to be a magical dude to like be a bad guy. Like you can just be a psycho.
Yeah.
Now, to be fair, Bane had his like little like
Suit,
gas mask
gas
thing, his
mask, yeah.
suit, but that was, to be fair, that was not what was supposed to happen in that movie anyway. In Dark Knight Rises was supposed to be a very different movie,
Yeah.
but because of the death of Heath Ledger, Nolan had to change everything around.
I
But
also
like
appreciate the fact that they didn't feel the need to rely on sculpted nipples and butt cheeks to
yeah,
make those bat
yeah,
suits look
thank goodness,
phenomenal.
yeah, it was just so good. Um, and then obviously Ducktales. If you have kids, talking about the new Ducktales is phenomenal. The theme song is a banger. And the Mission Impossible.
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
where do you go wrong with Mission Impossible? The TV show was fine for its time, and then Tom Cruise comes along, and I'm going to make these movies, and I hope that he does these until he's 95 years old because they're still phenomenal.
They're
Like
so good.
yeah,
Dead
like
Reckoning? Oh my
Dead
god,
Reckoning
phenomenal.
was incredible, and
Yes.
now they changed they changed the title because now it's just Dead Reckoning because it was supposed to be like part one and part two, but now they changed the title for the new one. I don't know what it is yet, but it's going to be phenomenal. I'm ready for it. Um, but those are like that's my list of those reboots I think are better. I mean, what are you gonna say about Mission Impossible? I mean, there's nothing to say. They're all good.
No.
I mean, Mission Impossible 2 happened, but that was still fine for its time. If you're not familiar, Mission
Yeah.
Impossible 2 was kind of a mistake. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't great.
Bump in the
But
proverbial road for sure.
but out of that movie, you got Limp Bizkit doing the theme song. Um, and so
Yeah.
don't you
No,
don't you dare trash my teenage angst new metal phase, okay? All right, that was a great time to be alive.
you're right. You're
Mission
right.
Impossible doing a major motion picture theme song?
And
Yes.
listen, I have
Yeah.
to say, I have to be transparent here because as much of a misstep as it seems that Mission Impossible 2 was in comparison to its predecessor and how they very clearly corrected themselves from 3 onward, um, Mission Impossible 2 was what really hooked me and when I because I remember when it came out. And I remember watching it and I remember thinking, this is the most absolutely insanely good movie I've ever seen in my life.
Listen,
It was
you're
so
not wrong.
stupid,
You're
but
you're not wrong. Look,
the
looking back,
motorcycle,
looking back today, it's terrible. But then you're
oh, it was
like,
so phenomenal then.
it's so amazing, so
Yeah.
amazing. But then now you look back at it like what you've had since then. You're like, okay, that was a mistake.
Yeah,
All right,
right.
two is like I think as I've gotten older and I've learned more about movies, I'm like, no, two wasn't good. Like two wasn't good. But
You're
but when I was but
all
dude, when I was
sensibilities.
15, 16 years old, freaking two was awesome, man.
Yeah.
Two was so good. Like the
Like,
entire thing was incredible.
the whole like, they really played on the masks in that movie,
Mhm.
which I thought was just killer.
Everyone wore a mask.
Yes.
Even the bad guy wore a mask, and it's like,
Yes.
where'd you get a mask making machine, dude? You're not in the IMF.
Right. Apparently he stole one, but that was again before they even created the whole lore about the mask making machine. So no,
It's in
but
my
like
jacket pocket,
the
my left jacket pocket, because he knew that Nadia was
because he
talking
felt
to Ethan.
you know,
Oh my gosh!
so
And you look at it, you're like, oh, it's
so
so good. And then now
Um,
you're like, oh, it's so bad.
right. No, I recently before the 6th one came out, I wanted to make sure uh that Allison and we went through the whole franchise because I wanted to go see that movie. I made her promise to go see it with me, and I wanted to get through the whole franchise first with her, so she wasn't lost the whole time. And we went through in the first one, she was like, "Wow, that was really good." And the second one, she was like, "That one wasn't as good, but it was still fun." And then the third one hits, which we've talked about this before. I think we've talked about our favorites in that franchise. And number 3 is by and large my
Philip
favorite.
Seymour Hoffman
Oh my
made that
gosh,
movie.
dude killed that movie in such a good way.
Like his Davian character was
Yes.
just Owen
Yes.
Davian, man.
So
That ooh,
yeah. So we get to that number 3 and we watch it, and at the end of the movie, she's just sitting there and she's like, "Oof, I don't think I can watch another one for a little while. That was way too intense." And then we got through 4, and then I don't think we've watched number 5 yet. Number 4 was the one where he climbs the Burj Khalifa, right?
yes, yeah.
Yeah, we watched that one, and she had the same reaction. She's like, "Oh my gosh, it's so intense. I don't think I can handle another one very soon." And we never got through number 5. And so she hasn't seen Henry Cavill come out with the whole pumping his arms up, getting ready to punch people. Freaking amazing. And then we went and saw Dead Reckoning, and the whole time she's like, "Hold my hand." She's white knuckling my hand the whole time because it's just so intense. She doesn't
So
handle
good.
intense movies very well.
That's all right.
It's so freaking good. Oh my gosh, I
My
love
wife
Mission Impossible.
my wife won't even watch movies, so you got that one up on me.
So let me give my we're getting close to time on wanting to keep our listeners from having to sit through 17 hours of us talking. So let me give
Right.
mine. I'll shotgun blast them out here. My first one, Lord of the Rings. If you're not familiar, Lord of the Rings had originally been condensed. The whole story had been condensed into a single animated film. And I have to say, I think it goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway. Peter Jackson and the film franchise from New Line are unbelievable. They are
It's
still
too long.
20 years later, and they're still absolutely phenomenal. Yeah, too
You
long.
made me
12
you
hours.
made me watch the direct. You said, "Hey, here's my Voodoo login or whatever
Yeah,
it is.
and I
Watch
only
the
have the
director's
extended
cut."
edition.
I said, "Sure, I'll do that." 4 hours long for each movie.
Each
12
one,
hours to get through 3 movies. Terrible. They're
but
they're
so
fine. The movies are
so
fine.
good.
too much time. It's way too. I'm sorry,
It's
it's too long.
here's the thing. It's too much story to fit a single book in a single movie. They could have made 2 films out of each book. I'm glad they didn't, because then it would have taken twice as long to get through it all or to get it all produced. But I love those movies. They're so good. My second
It's
one,
far
this
too
is
long.
going to be a bit controversial. Planet of the Apes. I'm not hating on Charlton Heston. I'm not hating on the original film. That film is unbelievable for its time, for the time period it was made. Every single version of it that came afterward, including Mark Wahlberg, and I love that movie too. Every version of that movie, every iteration, every sequel, every spinoff was just abysmal.
Don't
And
you
then
dare besmirch Mark
and
Wahlberg.
then James Franco and the whole cast, John Lithgow, the whole thing. The first one just rocked my world. So, so good. Andy Serkis is the king of mocap acting. He
Mhm.
was phenomenal. And every movie that came afterwards, and there's a new one coming this year, and I'm pumped about it. I don't know anything about it, but I'm pumped about it. But every single movie that has come after that has just built on that same story and has just amplified and just excelled, and just that whole rebooted franchise is so phenomenal. I'm not going to mention too much about it because you've already talked about it and we've discussed it to death. But the Batman, just beautifully made, incredibly produced, and I think the one thing I loved most is that it really leaned in. Batman was originally a detective. DC, for the uninitiated, DC means Detective Comics. And so all versions of Batman, including Christopher Nolan, and I love those movies, but every version of Batman has always been about the action and about the technology, not about his detective, investigative part of his career as Batman. And I loved, even though it did feature very heavily a lot of action and fighting and so on and so forth, which were beautifully done, I loved that it leaned more into him as a
Mhm.
detective, and it gave a slower pace to the story. But man, that brooding, slow pace of that murder mystery really aided that story. It was done beautifully. My next one, my second to last one, is Mortal Kombat. If you haven't seen the HBO
Phenomenal.
Warner, oh my gosh, it is the bloody mess that we all wanted it to be.
Yes, it's supposed to be. It's
Absolutely
Mortal Kombat.
brutal, gory, but so good.
That
And
scene where that scene where is it Sonya Blade and whoever, I think Jax are in like the trailer or whatever, and then like how does it, like somebody busts in there or whatever. I don't remember that part. Remember that part we're talking about?
I think so, yeah.
It's so good, so
The
good.
scene the scene when, um, I can't remember his name, the guy that has the hat, it's a blade.
Raiden.
No, the other guy that has the Raiden's has got the
Oh,
rice hat.
Kung Lao. Kung Lao.
No. Oh my gosh, I can't remember. Maybe Kung Lao. I don't know. He
I don't
takes
know.
his
I don't
hat
know
off
my characters.
and he throws it into the sand and it sticks and it spins, and then he like drop kicks this girl, the girl that has like the mouth that opens up and spits venom or whatever. Drop kicks her and she lands on the thing, and then he like surf rides her
It's
body
Kung
face.
Lao.
Was it Kung
It's
Lao?
Kung Lao. Don't
Okay,
question me. It's Kung Lao.
my apologies.
Yeah,
Anyway,
thank
he
you.
surf rides her body face first into that basically the buzzsaw and
It's
splits her
so
right down the
good.
middle.
So good. It's supposed to
Brutal,
be. The
brutal.
way the movie was intended to be was awful.
Oh yeah.
Awful.
But you have to think about it. When they made the first movie back in the 90s, it was really good. I mean, it was a solid piece of film. The second one, not so much, but the first one was super good. And they were trying to create a PG version of a very clearly R-rated game. And
Mhm.
they just leaned into it with this version, and it really worked. Plus, the acting was so much better, visual production was so much better. Wonderful. And my last one, sequels or reboots that are better than the original, is The Mummy. And I'm talking about the Brendan Fraser Mummy. I'm not talking about the Tom, though I love Tom Cruise, and the Tom Cruise Mummy movie, still very watchable and enjoyable. But Brendan Fraser, you cannot beat Brendan Fraser's Mummy. And that's proven that not even Tom Cruise could unseat that as the best and only worthy remake of the original old school Universal Mummy movie from back in the 50s or whatever. Absolutely phenomenal. The most charismatic and likable guy you could ever imagine, playing in one of the greatest, like you could almost call it an Indiana Jones spinoff because of the style and the action. And oh, Rachel Weisz is in that movie, absolutely phenomenal. Billy Zane as the mummy. Like, no, sorry, not Billy Zane. What was his name? I can't
Billy
remember.
Zane, I thought Billy Zane was in that movie.
Was it? 1999. Just the best. So good. I need to know before we sign.
The dead time is perfect for our audience.
Arnold Vosloo. I know we talked so much. It wasn't Billy Zane. It was Arnold Vosloo. Just great. Just great. I don't even need to mention any more than that.
And I want to
That's my
know.
list.
I didn't forget to mention. I did forget to mention on my list the greatest reboot of all time. Number
Okay.
1, Daniel Craig's run of James Bond.
I would
And
agree with
I'm
that.
a purist. Now, my late grandfather-in-law would argue with me that Pierce Brosnan was the greatest Bond of all time, and he's wrong.
Yeah.
But Daniel Craig, his run as James Bond, Casino Royale, that when that came out, with opening with the black and white scene, kind of showing this, Bond is this young kid who's just learning how to be Bond, and
Mhm.
every movie, even Quantum of Solace, which people dog on, was phenomenal. They're all great.
I will say he had the best exit of a Bond of all time. I hated it and loved it at the same time.
Right.
The fact that and if you haven't seen the movie, turn off now because I'm about to spoil the ending of the last one.
I think everyone knows that he dies.
But he
Everyone
died at the end, and I love it. I love it because I love when film franchises are willing to risk it for the biscuit, so to speak. We talked about this in a couple episodes ago about how Marvel just isn't willing to commit to killing a character because they're too valuable.
Mhm.
And, granted, um, James Bond doesn't die because Daniel Craig's version of him dies. They reboot or they just lean into the fan fiction that James Bond and 007 are code names and codes for an operative.
Honestly, I'm hoping that it's that honestly I'm hoping that the next one's a full reboot. I really do hope that. I tell a different story. There are plenty of books that you can that you can redo. I would love to see just a full on reboot. Get someone young enough that you can do another 5 or 6 films with them. You got to get someone that you can have in that role for a long time. But
yeah.
No, I think that really, I think our lists are there's a lot of crossover.
Yeah.
I think a lot of things that you said I would agree on. And as for the reboots, my disdain for Lord of the Rings. I think it's a fine movie, but it's just not my cup of tea. It's too long.
Yeah.
Says the guy that is planning at some point to watch Oppenheimer, and it's 3 hours long. I don't know when I'm going to do that. I've got kids. I don't know how to do this. Like, I don't know how to do.
Here's how you do it.
anymore.
This is how I did with. This is how I do any movie that's long. This is how I did with the Justice League Snyder cut, which was phenomenal.
No, that was one sitting. I couldn't stop. That was one sitting. I was down.
It was worth the second time I had to do it in episode. But this is how I do it. I'll watch for an hour and then I'll pause and I'll go do whatever I got to do, and then I'll take another, and I'll make it 2 or 3 weeks before I get through the entire thing. But I get there. I get there. Well, before we sign off, let me say one thing. If you enjoy this show, we love this show because we like to talk about these things. We just enjoy having a good conversation about stuff we like. And if you enjoy this show, we hope that you will subscribe and continue watching and listening. And we hope that you will give StreamYard above Austin's head. You're never gonna get it
right there. I can't figure this out. I don't know how to do it because you're on camera and so you're reversed and it's just
and it's
right
like
there.
Yeah, so StreamYard, top corner, just above Austin's finger there. We hope you'll give them a look. If you it's never gonna work with your level of science knowledge.
You're stupid. Why can
he just like
I hate it.
Anyway, we are affiliate partners with StreamYard. They are the platform that we use to create this show for all of you and for ourselves. And if you have any interest in learning more about making a podcast or starting your own, you can check out StreamYard. And if you use the affiliate link that we have tagged below or on our Facebook page, it helps to support the show. So I haven't even talked to you about this yet, Austin, but there's a good chance that we may or may not have some merch show up at some point in the future that you could also support the show by purchasing.
That would be incredible.
We don't know. Let us know
Maybe.
if you want to see some merch. If you'd wear a T-shirt with some quote or our logo, or maybe one
I'll
of
make
our
my kids. I'll make my kids wear because they're cute.
So anyway, thank you so much for tuning in. Oh, I forgot to start the music. Hold on.
Oh, do it. Oh,
I got
hey, as you're starting, I will say this: if Metroid 2 never happened, Metroid is the greatest sequel of all time because that's one of the greatest games of all time. Thank you very much.
Metroid,
Super Metroid on Super Nintendo,
Super Metroid.
and
It's got a
also
cool suit. I'll say that.
if Zelda 2: The Adventures of Link never happens, then Link to the Past is also one of the greatest games of all time, sequels of all time. But here we are.
Here we are. Gosh, this is not as long as last week, but it's getting there.
It's getting there. We have a lot in our minds. We have a lot in our minds.
We had a lot to say. Okay, listener,
That's how it is.
viewer, if you don't watch our shorts, don't look at our shorts, not the ones we're wearing. Watch the short videos.
Watch the shorts on the Instas and the Facebooks. And
Yeah,
the
watch the
YouTubes
short
and
clips.
stuff.
We're putting content out all the time. We're posting articles. We want you to.
Would you rather us just do one episode and then quit for 2 years like we did last time? No,
Come on, son. We're doing
Knock
this
it
for
off.
real this time.
it's not going to stop. Can't stop, won't stop.
Except for right now, we're about to stop. So
So the kids say. That's
Yeah.
true. I'm going to bed.
yeah, same. All right. Bye, everybody. See you next time.
Goodbye.